Because we don't understand how life formed, it is difficult to estimate this probability. The likelihood of a complex molecule like DNA being created by random collisions of atoms in a primordial ocean is fantastically small. In an infinite universe, it would happen in some places, but they would be very far apart. If we want to find advanced intelligent life, our best bet is to listen for radio signals.
Look up to the stars and the forests that surround. Do you see them? Do you hear them? Are they there? SpacedOutRadio.com presents S4 with Forest Moon Paranormal's Eric Cooper and friends. Also, take the time to join the Forest Moon Paranormal Facebook group.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque.
Conspiracy, Area 51, Dogman, Ghosts, Cover-Ups, UFOs. The hidden will reveal itself.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go live on S4 with Eric Cooper.
All right, good evening, S4ians. We are having choppy internet tonight, so we're going until the internet just decides to drop, you know. Welcome from the mountains of Concrete, Washington, the headquarters of Forest Moon Paranormal and S4. The views and opinions of S4 do not reflect that of Spaced Out Radio. And oh my God, you haven't heard of Spaced Out Radio? www.spacedoutradio.com with Dave Scott and James Tyson on the weekends. Don't miss it. 9 p.m. every night from 9 p.m. to midnight Pacific Standard Time. How you guys doing? We have Corey Ruiz here from Forest Moon Paranormal as well up in Concrete, and Seth Kinsey from The Quickening and S4, our co-hosts. Tonight, I'll do some announcements real quick, and then we'll jump right into the presidents and the paranormal. So we have T-shirts for sale for Forest Moon Paranormal. All proceeds are going to the Paracon. The link to that is on the Forest Moon Paranormal group. And if you haven't joined Forest Moon Paranormal, we are an emergency response paranormal team. Paracon, we have, as of yesterday, Mystic Sanctuary is locked in as our primary vending store. Anyone else that wants to vend, $30 for a booth. And get your VIP tickets now. There's only 29 available. So get them. Corey Ruiz is on the roundtable panel, as a matter of fact. I know he's excited. So our speakers are Mike Morin talking about ghosts and hauntings and the ethics of the paranormal. Dave Scott talking paranormal in the media. Christina George is talking alien abduction, past and present, and the signs. And we got Markham talking science of the paranormal, and Tyler Allen talking life of Bigfoot. Everything's free minus your VIP tickets. Real quick, May 12th, paranormal discussion, 11 a.m. at the Lone Star Restaurant in Concrete. Followed by the 13th is the emergency response training at the Granny Lake Campground, 2 p.m. Wilderness survival and first aid. So, why are we talking wilderness survival? Anyone? Seth, why would we talk wilderness survival in the paranormal? Seth, you still with us? How about you, Corey? Oh, Corey, did I lose both my co-hosts?
I can't hear you, Cooper.
Huh. We are having Skype issues, naturally. Anyway, so wilderness survival and the paranormal. So if you're watching Bigfoot TV shows, they're always wearing khaki shorts. They've got their little camera guy. Does anybody ever talk about wilderness survival? No, they don't. So you got, Joe Schmo over here going, oh, I want to go look for Bigfoot. Or I want to go look for UFOs, and it's in the mountains. And, well, they get lost. They're pretty much screwed. So, to me, wilderness survival, being military, is important anyway. And us being in the mountains, and most of our cases are going to be in the mountains when we're on boots on the ground cases. So, naturally, wilderness survival and first aid is important. So we're covering that on May 13th. So April 30th, next week, we're talking UFO activity. Is it on the rise, and what's that mean for us? Looking at the patterns, are aliens flying them, and why are they on the rise if that's the case? So that's next week's show. Let's see if we can't figure out what's going on with Corey and Seth. And I'm tired of technical problems. I'm tired of internet.
I can hear you a little better now.
Okay. Is Seth still with us?
I am here.
Okay.
The technical difficulties make it a little bit difficult, but I am here.
Okay, real quick. We're going to start from the beginning. We're covering all the presidents tonight. And, of course, most of you know that when it comes to the paranormal, to us here in Forest Moon, paranormal is everything from ghost spirits, hauntings, to UFOs, alien abduction, and cryptids. So when I say paranormal, we're covering the entire, the whole plethora of paranormal activity with the presidents, starting from the beginning. Now, in the very beginning, as most of us know, our founding fathers were all Masons. And that's where it starts. And when it comes to the Illuminati, which is kind of intertwined with the Knights Templar and the Masons, they all had an influence. The Illuminati was started with many theories. The Illuminati started with reptilians. So you have alien influence right from the beginning. So starting with George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, we're going to start from the beginning here. So George Washington was the first president. He was April 30th, 1789 to March 4th of 1797. That doesn't sound right. Yeah, it does. Anyone got anything on George Washington?
Well, I know that he became a master mason, and you know their involvement with things. Outside of aliens, my research with him really didn't turn up a whole lot, so I'm hoping Corey can save us on this one.
Right.
Actually, yeah. I was doing a little research earlier, and I came across information. it appears that he had early on in the war that he actually had some. It almost sounds like he had an alien, maybe even more than a spirit guide, come in and try to show him what was going to happen. It showed him 3 perils of what was going to happen, of how the British were basically going to come over and what they were going to do. And basically they showed him almost in an angelic way. So it's kind of hard to tell if they did, if it was an alien thing or if it was, possibly a spirit guide tape thing. But in a way, there was some documented experience that he had, where, like in the first parallel, it says, Washington had said, "Presently I hear a voice saying, 'Son of the Republic, look and learn.' While at the same time my visitor extended an arm eastward, I beheld a dark, shadowy being, like an angel, standing, or rather floating, in midair between Europe and America, dipping water out of the ocean in the hollow of each hand. He sprinkled some upon America with his right hand, while with his left hand he cast some over Europe. Immediately a cloud arose from these countries and joined in mid-ocean. Then it moved slowly westward until it enveloped America in its murky folds. Sharp flashes of lightning gleamed through, and I heard the smothered groans and cries of the American people." Some have interpreted this to be initial visions of the Revolutionary War.
And real quick, Corey, that was
starting to unfold.
That was Washington's vision of Valley Forge, correct?
What?
That was Washington's vision of Valley Forge? All right, we're on
that was, let me see here. I'm kind of having to look through some of my notes here that I was doing this. I believe that's where he was. He was at, I can't remember exactly where it said here. I'm just trying to look back to see if I can see it. Maybe I don't have that piece there. But this was kind of pre-war. Everybody kind of knew it was coming, type of thing, where it was going to happen. And I think it was where Washington was kind of sitting down, and he was kind of disturbed by everything that was going on and feeling a bit depressed, I suppose. And then these visions happened. Now, again, like I say, I don't know if this was an alien type of thing, or if it was actually type of spirit guide type of thing. Reading through it myself, it kind of sounded like one of those where it's very possible, because the alien races definitely have the technology to do it, to basically make something appear to someone like this in this situation where that's how they would perceive it. It was some type of angelic prophecy to them.
Right.
But it was basically they started telling him basically how the war would go.
Probably because he was a
and
Mason.
then it actually went into second and third perils where it talked about they gave him a prophecy about civil war. So basically, there's been paranormal activity in presidential realm since the beginning of the U.S. Literally.
Well, indeed, and the question comes up, and I've asked this question before: why do so many other countries have more UFO and alien activity than America does? Well, America, going back, America's only a couple hundred years old, and so naturally, we're going to have less activity, historically because of that fact. And if you look at Native American lore, even they described aliens and learned from alien races throughout history. So next up, we have John.
America is definitely, a pretty young country compared to a lot of the others.
Mm-hmm.
America is definitely a young country compared to a lot of the others. So it's not a very big surprise that some of these other countries, have more UFO sightings throughout time. I mean, you got to think that you go back to Egyptians and Romans, and times prior to that. Where you see these great, sometimes paintings and artifacts and cave drawings and temple drawings, where you see these things that would very much represent UFOs or alien type beings.
Oh, hands down, yeah, most definitely.
They're much older than us.
And and then you go back to the Mahabharata in India, and you go to the Bible, and you go to the sacred texts, all describe, and they're thousands and thousands of years old, so most definitely. Now, when's the next president you have information on? So we've got John Adams, who was March 4th, 1797 to 1801. We have Thomas Jefferson, 1801 to 1809. We have Madison, 1809 to 1817, Monroe, 1817 to 1825, John Quincy Adams, 1825 to 1829, Andrew Jackson, 1829 to 1837, Martin Van Buren, 1837 to 1841. Now it gets interesting, because now you have William Henry Harrison from 1841 to 1841. March 4th to April 4th, he died of pneumonia while in office. The first one dying. And yeah, I'm kind of gathering that, Joe, because it seems Skype's not cooperating tonight. Let me turn you guys' microphones up. Go ahead and say something, Seth.
I am here. There's just a little bit of technical difficulty, but I made a list of what I had as far as the most interesting
real quick,
cases based upon
real quick, what's the
what
earliest?
I found.
What's the earliest one you've got?
Coop, dude, you're underwater, bud.
Okay.
I'm hearing like every other word, man.
Huh. Then it's Skype, because according to the studio, everyone's hearing. Huh. All right, let me see about adding. Let's see here. I'm going to add Corey back in. So who's the earliest president you've got information on?
All right, with me, let's see. Right here, I'm going to scroll straight on down. Now, what's interesting, and I'm not getting all political. I mean, we're talking about presidents, but what I mean is, way back during the election, we were talking about before how we all thought that they were going to coronate Hillary, and we obviously know that didn't happen. But one of the last appearances she had before she disappeared off the face of the planet here was she was on a talk show, late night talk show, and she says, well, you know, what's going to happen is if I become president, I'm running to those files, and I'm going to disclose everything I can if it's there, and if it's not there, I want to tell people that they're there. And during this goings on, there's studies that says that SETI has researched that 38% of America believes that we are visited or that there are alien spacecraft. And with that being said, the earliest one that I have with the most interesting, Truman. Now, in 1947, an object crashed near Roswell. We know all that. Mm-hmm. And the initial media reports said that the object was a flying saucer. And we know how that was quickly changed into a weather balloon and the cover-up and the whole 9 yards. Now, it was part of Project Mogul, they say, designed to spy on Soviet nuclear tests. Now, Truman joked about flying saucers and laughed and such, and there's a transcript of a press conference here in which he discussed it, and he says, I have no special announcements to make. I thought you might have some questions you might like to ask me. Now, they're asking him, okay, I'm going down through here because he's talking about vetoing the tax bill. I have the whole transcript of this here. Now, let's see. Scrolling down, he's talking about different tax bills that he wanted to cancel then and there. Now, let's see. Okay, but he did. There's a whole big transcript there, and I'll actually provide the link to that for the listeners if they would like to go through that and find his comments. But now we all know that Jimmy Carter, he has a very personal relationship with the controversy of UFOs. He opened right up about it, and he said that he saw a UFO in 1969 just before he was president. And he says, and I quote, I was outside a school lunchroom one night before sundown. It was getting dark, and we were getting ready to eat supper. And I and about 25 men were standing around, and all of a sudden in the western sky, we saw a strange light coming toward us. And it was a round light. He was on Larry King Live, and he was talking about this. He says it got closer and closer, and right above the pine trees it stopped, and then it began to change colors from blue to red to white. Then it stayed there for a while. We were all aghast. We don't know what it was. And then it just disappeared into the west. That was the end of it. I have never thought, and still don't think it is possible, for creatures from Mars to visit us, he said. He didn't attribute the event to aliens per se, but he did talk about the craft. But during his presidency, he asked NASA to investigate UFOs. According to Leslie Kean, investigative journalist and author of the book UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials, go on the record.
Right.
And he says how Carter went on to request through his science advisor, Frank Press, in 1977, asking NASA to look into the UFO phenomenon. And the request came from the highest office in the land. NASA had still declined for whatever reason. This shows that even presidents cannot always get information about some topic. So that leads me to believe, guys, when you think about this, that for whatever reason, whatever connection they have, not every single president is let in on this. I mean, I could just imagine now. We have Donald Trump saying, well, we built a wall, but I don't know if it's going to keep out the little green men,
Right.
I find it interesting also, though, because I was doing some reading on that as well, that it seemed like later on that Carter said, he stated somewhere as he was talking to, I believe he was doing an interview with someone, and he had said that, he says, I don't necessarily believe that UFO delivers to little green men, but I did see an unidentified flying object. So it seems a little odd somewhere along the way that he kind of changed the story on it. So it's almost like somebody had a chat with him somewhere along the line and said, "Hey, shut up."
Mm-hmm.
You know, Carter aside, I think the most interesting one as far as sightings go was Reagan. Reagan and his wife were driving up the coast of California and had their sighting, and they actually went to a garden party all freaked out. So when it comes to dramatic sightings, I'd say Reagan's probably take that one. What's your thoughts?
Now, we know when he gave that speech, when Reagan gave the speech, about the alien threat, they say that was linked to a secret UN interstellar space fleet. Now, on September 21st, 1987, when he gave this speech, I was 4 years old in the United Nations General Assembly, and he warned of an alien threat and how important it was for all of us to band together to deal with it. The whistleblower Corey Goode, Goode, revealed that Reagan's comment had the immediate effect of galvanizing the United Nations into forming a space program called the Galactic League of Nations. Now, Reagan said, and I quote, "In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." Now, Corey Goode replied to questions in which he was asked about the relationship between this Galactic League of Nations space program and the UN, as it were. And in the infancy of this program, it goes along with a speech given to the UN by Reagan that mentions how quickly we could come together if there was an alien threat. Now, going on the notion that he's correct, Reagan's speech stirred the shit behind the scenes, so to speak, and really made the United Nations ramp up in an effort to band everybody together with a space fleet in an attempt to try to be a first front against anything sinister that might come. But then there's other email interviews with Corey Goode in which he gave out some more details spanning his 6 years that he spent on the science research vessel Arnold Summerfield, and it belonged to the Solar Warden space program. And he was on Gaia TV talking about that. And when he talked about that, he talked about the propulsion system used, and the name of the ship was due to it having to do with Arnold Summerfield being one of the first in working on thought experiments about time travel. And this led to the research of working with tachyons, which are faster than light particles that would be detrimental for some very rapid interstellar space travel through black holes and whatnot. Now, Mr. Goode, he wasn't 100% sure why the research vessel was named after Mr. Summerfield. He didn't flat out confirm the mechanics in which it flew, but he did say that it had something to do with quantum entanglement between isotopes. And one of the last things that he gave up in an email interview, in these series of email interviews, he discusses criticisms that the Blue Avian extraterrestrials are part of MK Ultra Project Bluebird, the mind control program, and himself, along with some other MILLAB experimentees or abductees, how they were used as guinea pigs in this. Now, in his response, he talked about the importance of basically not discrediting the former MyLab people based on the grounds that they were involved in mind control programs. Now, that's all I have on that as far as Reagan and Mr. Corey Good.
Now, real quick for our new listeners.
I saw something along the lines too that
for our new listeners,
Reagan also in that same process, even though him and Gorbachev didn't get along all that well because of the wall and everything, he had actually asked Gorbachev in a meeting at one point that if alien races came in and did an invasion, if he would work with the United States in defending the world. And Gorbachev said, well, yeah.
Now, for our new listeners, we did an MK Ultra show, and it's in the archives. Also on the Reagan note, for the old time listeners who've been listening to us for a while, y'all know I've been studying the works of Dante Centauri, and I still am. And Reagan came up a lot today in the videos I watched today. There's a race called the Rogues, and they played a lot with Reagan. And I've always had the theory that shadow people, and I think most shadows in paranormal events are actually just that, shadows or other forms other forms of entities. But the shadows that have hats are supposed to be this rogue race. And if you look at the picture, let's see. If you look at the picture of Gorbachev and Reagan,
we got some static, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you look at the picture of Reagan and Gorbachev signing, you will see a shadow. So many think that this rogue race, which are based under the ocean off the coast of California and off the coast of Italy. Now, if you're in California and you see a UFO that looks like a hat with an antenna, that is supposed to be the rogue race ship. That's what their ships look like. And ideally, we'll be getting Skype back here as soon as we can. I'm going to cut them off and recall them here momentarily. So now with the rogue race, their first sighting was in the 1700s in Japan. Okay, we got you guys back. Corey, Seth, you guys back?
You there, Coop?
Yep, I'm right here.
Okay, as long as the listeners are here and we're real good. I know we got some stuff on Clinton. I know that Corey has some stuff on Clinton too, so I'll let him fire away. And I'll see, Corey, if I have anything that you don't have and vice versa.
Okay. Well, actually, what I have is not a ton, but it actually one that applies to both Clinton and Obama. Let me pull it up here real quick. Take me a second. Where is it? Apparently, there's, for many of you who know Mr. Jimmy Kimmel, both Clinton and Obama went on his show, and Jimmy Kimmel had asked both presidents basically the same question. Kimmel stated to Clinton, he said to him, "If I was president, I would demand to see all the classified files on the UFOs because I want to know. I'd want to know what has been going on. Did you do that?" And Clinton's response was, "Sort of." Later, he asked basically the same question of Obama. He said, "If I was president, I would immediately race to wherever they had the files about Area 51 and UFOs, and I'd go there, go through everything to find out what happened." He says, "Did you do that?" And Obama's response to him, "That's why you will not be president, because that's the first thing you would do." Which, of course, they both had a little laugh and a giggle like they were laughing it off. But you really think about that response there from the both of them, and it really makes the wheels spin. During the short exchange, Obama fired back with more potentially provocative comments, such as, "The aliens won't let it happen. You'd reveal all their secrets, and they exercise strict control over us," Obama said. "I can't reveal anything." When Kimmel pressed him on it, telling him how Clinton claimed to have looked into government files on UFOs and found nothing, Obama replied, "Well, you know what? That's what they were instructed to tell you."
And you know about the exchange between Barack Obama and Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son, when Will Smith and Jaden Smith went to visit the White House during the Obama presidency. Did you hear about that?
Actually, that's one I didn't hear about.
Okay, well, I forget the exact date, and this isn't necessarily important as it is based upon the content, but from time to time in the White House, they have different celebrity guests and things like that, and the correspondence dinners. Well, at one point in time, Will Smith and his son Jaden Smith were guests of President Barack Obama at the time. And he actually took them into the Situation Room, and Jaden Smith asking, because, the Men in Black and how his dad was in the Men in Black movies, and he asked Obama about aliens. He says, "So this is a Situation Room?" And he says, "Yeah, it is." And he says, "Well, what can you tell me about aliens?" And Barack Obama said something along the lines of, "I can't confirm or deny the existence of these aliens, but I can tell you right now that if we had anything to do with them, we would have discussed it right here in this room." And the Situation Room, of course, as you know, is where they watched SEAL Team 6 take out Osama bin Laden, as the story goes. And they have the videos and the pictures of everybody watching SEAL Team 6 going in and doing their job there on that. But, that could be taken seriously. But at the same time, like Corey said, when you're watching the Jimmy Kimmel interviews, they kind of nonchalantly shove it off to the side just to make you wonder. Just enough that it's there, ha-ha. But there's still that little subtle undertone of read between the lines, perhaps it's there. And it's either thought-provoking or insulting, depending upon the way you look at it. It's thought-provoking if maybe they were, because you got to understand, like with the Council of Five and how this all weighs in, is maybe they're allowed to only open up so much, just like Corey had said. Maybe that was their subtle way of saying, look, or we're all being duped. I mean, that's up for the listeners and everybody else to decide based upon evidences that we see every single day.
And you also
We know these
did
presidents
you guys hear
have
about
knowledge of this stuff.
Did you guys hear about Reagan and his meeting with Steven Spielberg during E.T.? Steven Spielberg went to the White House.
No, what do you got on that?
Oh my God! Steven Spielberg went to the White House to do the first viewing of E.T. with Ronald Reagan. When E.T. first came out, they did a premiere, and it was Ronald Reagan and his entourage, and I believe his wife was there. Steven Spielberg said that he thought he saw Neil Armstrong.
Oh, yeah.
He thought he saw Neil Armstrong and a few other people that were actually there, and they watched E.T. And when it was done, Ronald Reagan thanked Steven Spielberg and said, "There are many in this room that can attest to the fact that your movie is very accurate." And that came straight from Steven Spielberg. That's not even hearsay. Steven Spielberg, those are words that came right out of his mouth that, Ronald Reagan told him that the movie E.T. was pretty accurate when it came to, aliens are here. So, I mean, Reagan was a key figure. I mean, we're not even talking Truman. We're not even talking, Eisenhower and the alien treaty and all that. We're talking fact here that, even Reagan came out and told Spielberg, for example, that the aliens are here. And thank you for making this movie.
Yeah, now I remember reading something about that in which he talked about that meeting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look at the research, folks. Look up Ronald Reagan and UFOs, and like I was saying, even if you look at the pictures with, oh my God, I'm gonna have to pull up my other notes. But if you look at the picture of Gorbachev and Reagan signing the Star Wars treaty, you'll see a shadow in the background, and you'll also see another man. Reagan and Gorbachev are not alone. There's another man that's in there. And I'm about to pull those notes up. I'm taking notes of every video I watch from Dante Santori. Because they're amazing. They're mind-boggling is an understatement. And if you haven't seen the links, Anthony View, I think, was his name. So yeah, Ronald Reagan, before he was California governor, had a dramatic sighting of UFOs coming up the California coast. And so this rogue race that I mentioned earlier, they made no.
Now, there's George Bush right after him.
You still here? Where did he go, Seth?
Go ahead, Seth.
All right. Yeah, I didn't know where you were, boss. George Bush in the administration directly after Reagan, he was head of CIA first off. So if he's head of the CIA, it goes without saying he knew some shit. If there was any shit to know and he was the head of the CIA, then George Bush Sr., Papa Bush, had to know something, if anything, about these things. Now, he was in Orlando a little while back, and he was with his son, W., and it was during one of Jeb Bush's fundraisers when he was doing the campaigning before he petered out. Now, George Bush Sr. kind of left the crowd a little speechless when they asked him about UFOs, some of the journalists there, and he took them all by surprise. Now, he was trying to help Jeb Bush's presidential campaign, and they were together there having a fundraiser, and a fellow in the crowd asked about aliens. He said, okay. He said, are there aliens? Are there ships? You know, you were the former director of the CIA, and basically, when would the government tell us about it? And George Bush Sr. piped right up. He said, Americans can't handle the truth. And then all the organizers of the event, before George Bush Sr. could go on much more, they kind of hushed it and diverted it. Now, it isn't the first time that Sr. had a controversial opinion on the subject. In 1988, on March 7th, during a trip to a Bush rally for president, when he was in Rogers, Arkansas, let's see, it says, he was asked in the event that if he became president, the same as the others, you know, would you run and shout to the roof from the rooftops, you know, the UFOs are coming, UFOs are coming. And he said, I'm very careful in public life about dealing with classified information such as this. And you know what's funny is they're trying to say now, like when you saw him at the last Super Bowl in the wheelchair, and, you know, he looked like, with all due respect to the former president, he looked like he didn't know Khmer from Sikkim. And they're trying to say that all these comments that he's had about it is because he's losing his cognitive function. They're trying to credit it to, you know, the age, quite possibly dementia. And, of course, that's an easy one to chalk up. And for a skeptic or someone to easily want to discredit it, it's easy to say, oh, yeah, he's losing his marbles, his cheese is off his cracker. What could he possibly know about aliens? Guys, girls, he was the head of the CIA.
Exactly.
And I don't know other presidents, to be honest, how exactly they were involved in that. But you really have to think. There's so much. This goes back to Kennedy, who was assassinated. And one of the reasons they think he was assassinated is because he was going to get rid of the CIA, and he was going to start up a different intelligence organization. And with that being said, a lot of the CIA's backdoor dealings would have then become declassified. And it makes you wonder exactly what knowledge that JFK had about these things before they picked him off.
Well, you know,
I read in one of the articles that I was reading on that JFK actually knew quite a bit. And the reason that he got picked off was because he was going to spill the beans. He was going to lay it all out for everybody, and they went, yeah, no, bang, you're dead. I mean, these presidents have known a lot about it for a long time. I mean, in 1966, Gerald Ford, when he was congressional representative, proposed a congressional inquiry into the recent rash of UFO sightings at the time. You know, LBJ, after the Kennedy assassination, when it was approached to discuss the issue, said, I don't want to know. You know, he had heard the rumors about JFK being killed because of the knowledge and wanting to spill it, and he said, I don't want to know. I don't want to know nothing about it. Nixon was known and touted to brag to some of his close friends about it. And I'm trying to pull up a little piece here that I was reading earlier about that. Because it was said that he actually took one of his friends, and I can't remember exactly who it is right now, but was actually a pretty prominent person, celebrity of types, and showed him pieces of craft and alien bodies This is alleged that that's what happened. So these presidents have known for a long time, whether ahead of the CIA or not ahead of the CIA. You've got Obama saying, I can't tell you anything. Well, you know what? These presidents are well privy to a lot of these top secret documents, whether people think that they are or not, because they ain't going to tell you stuff like that if they didn't see it. They know. They know it's there. They know what's happening. They know the deals and stuff that have been made. And the bottom line is that the powers that be, apparently above them, say, you're going to shut up. You aren't going to say anything. So, I mean, that goes to tell you right there that there is something far larger and far more powerful than any president out there. If they're basically telling presidents this, you're going to shut up, or basically you're going to see the same thing happen that JFK happened.
And I'm reading also about Kennedy. Kennedy actually got invited by George Adamski, the famous contactee of the 1950s, to come out and meet the quote unquote Space Brothers. You guys dig anything about that up? That actually came from UFO researcher Cooper. Hold on, what's his name? I can't find it. But yeah, actually, George Adamski invited Kennedy out to White Sands Missile Range where he worked, and where Timothy Cooper, a UFO researcher whose father, while stationed at Holloman Air Force Base, played an active role in the investigation of a rash of UFO sightings in the White Sands Military Missile Range in the late 40s. Cooper claimed that a reliable source had informed him that JFK did fly out to an Air Force base to personally watch an unidentified bogey track from an aircraft under tight security, which got no press coverage sometime in 1962. Further, Cooper stated that he had been told that Kennedy went to Holloman Air Force Base for a tour and a UFO briefing during his administration. A second invitation to meet with the aliens came from George Adamski, a famous contactee from the 1950s. And again, you can hear about George Adamski in our contactee archive. The story is told by Lou Zinstag, who is Adamski's Swiss representative for his Get Acquainted program. This is a program recommended by the space people to Adamski to inform the people of the space people's existence. Sounds like disclosure to me that never happened. So Zinstag wrote in her book, George Adamski, The Untold Story. So Adamski, in a related matter, claimed that President Kennedy had a secret meeting with him at the Willard Hotel near the White House in May of 1963. The Willard Hotel is a famous hotel, a little over a block from the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue. So have you guys heard about that one?
No, I haven't.
I find that one unique because, I mean, everyone's heard of George Adamski. He's got he's actually in Switzerland, and he's still active today. So for him to have documentation of Kennedy. Now, the other thing with Kennedy is, from what I'm learning through this other research I'm doing, is it was actually the race Mater that killed JFK. Now, people throw out all these different theories, and it's all conjecture, folks. What makes sense? That's what you go with. Does the Mater killing off JFK make sense? It does and it doesn't. The Mater, if you're familiar with them, listen to the alien race show that we did, and you'll hear a lot more about the Mater. Not so much about the B-Lash. The Rogue is new to me as well. But listen to the Alien Race series, and you'll hear all about the Mater. The reptilians look like pets compared to the Mater. Wouldn't you say, Corey? So who else we got? What do you have on Truman? Seth? You still there, Seth?
What's up, Coop?
Hey, what do you got on Truman?
On Truman?
Yeah.
I read about him earlier in regards to what I had. What about him?
What about
I'm really catching only every other word.
What about Eisenhower? Did you find anything about Eisenhower and the alien agreement?
Okay, in regards to Eisenhower. Now, with Eisenhower, the most we found out about Team Silk, or Project Silk, depending on what circle, is that it existed. And what existed was a team between Churchill and Eisenhower, and they wouldn't meet over the phone or over the airwaves. It had to be in public. Not in public, but it had to be in person, I should say. And they met on 3 occasions. And on some of those meetings, they say that aliens were present, at least at one of them, in which a deal was made that some humans would be given up for genetic experiments like cattle, or for whatever reason, quite possibly even as food sustenance, in exchange for alien technology from then on out, not just at that time, but alien technology to help further our advancement. And I found an interesting article here in which Eisenhower's granddaughter spoke up. And it says Mr. Eisenhower was one of the highest ranking American generals in United States history, which, he's only really bested there by, if you want to talk about knowledge, he's bested by George Bush, who was the head of the CIA, but still being as high up as he was on the totem pole in the military. He was also our 34th president, 8-year term, and he was supreme commander of the Allied forces in Europe during World War II, for those who aren't aware of that. And his military career was long and very decorated. And if anybody who knew anything about supposed extraterrestrials and the phenomenon surrounding that, it would be him. And he took the place of Truman, who was president, while Eisenhower was supreme commander. And after being asked if he had been briefed on the topic, he stated on live television, "Yes, we discussed it at every conference that we had with the military, and they never were able to make me a concrete report on it. There's always things like that going on, flying saucers, and they've had other things, And you fast forward more than 50 years later, one thing that we all know is that UFOs are here. They are an international phenomenon. They've gained the attention of the media. They've gained the attention of the alternate media. They've gained the attention of all the governments and any ABC alphabet soup organization you can think of. Now, Carlos Castro Caveira, the Spanish Air Force general, he gave a statement in the 70s regarding all this, and he says, in English, "The nations of the world are currently working together in the investigation of the UFO phenomenon. There is an international exchange of data. Maybe when this group of nations acquires more precise and definite information, it will be possible to release the news to the world." Now, some of these encounters that were discussed by Dr. Jacques Vallée, scientist notable for helping to develop the first computerized mapping of Mars for NASA, and his work at SRI International on the network information for ARPANET, which you guys know the ARPANET was the precursor to the Internet. In a paper he published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, which is titled Estimates of Optical Power Output in 6 Cases of Unexplained Aerial Objects with Defined Luminosity Characteristics. Now, these objects in question are witnessed by military pilots, and they're tracked on the air and ground radar at the same time. They're seen performing maneuvers that our vehicles, our technology, our aircraft, as we know it and understand it, they can't replicate it. They are able to travel, obviously, more silent, more stealthy than we are. And that's what this publication he was talking about has an indication of. Now, one example of this comes from the Iranian Air Force. They dispatched 2 F-4 fighter jets to check out a questionable flying object. The U.S. took this encounter very seriously, and they kind of interjected and sent a report of what happened based on what they found out when they got involved with it. Now, they sent this to President Gerald Ford, the CIA Director George Bush, and National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger. Now, both of the F-4 interceptor pilots reported seeing the object visually, and it was also tracked on the radar in the air and on the ground. These planes experienced critical instrumentation failure and electronics going haywire and such like that at just a distance of 25 miles from the object. Whenever they would get within 25 miles of this thing, they would have failure. Now, an excerpt of this report says, as the F-4 approached a range of 25 nautical miles, he lost all instrumentation and communication, UHF and intercom. He broke off the intercept and headed back to Shekrowi. When the F-4 turned away from the object and apparently was no longer a threat to it, the aircraft regained all instrumentation and communication. The object and the pursuing F-4 continued on a course to the south of Tehran, Iran, where another brightly lighted object estimated to be 1/2 to 1/3 of the apparent size of the moon came out of the original object. The second object headed straight toward the F-4 at a very fast rate of speed. The pilot attempted to fire an AIM-9 missile at the object, but at that instant his weapons control panel went off and he lost all communication, UHF and intercom. Now, on top of all these files and publications, especially like what the FBI has, that we have dealt with a very high level of extraterrestrial intelligence, is Eisenhower's granddaughter, who said, let's see, Laura Eisenhower, she was asked about her great-grandfather and his supposed meeting with the alien beings, and her comment on this was, I mean, what we have to understand is that the Second World War wasn't really won. We were dealing with the things like Project Paperclip. We were dealing with, Admiral Byrd in 1947 going to Nazi bases in Antarctica and being defeated. So all these things were going on underneath. It's like this whole other reality is going on that we didn't hear about. And all of a sudden, Dwight Eisenhower is voted into presidency. And, this facade of winning the war, begins to just take us further and further away from, these are her words, the extraterrestrial concept and what it really means, and what it really is about what it is, the interaction. So I would say that he was instrumental in warning us about the military-industrial complex and his integrity, and I think that the imprint that he left has allowed us to look back and open that door up and ask these questions that weren't asked back then. But my intuitive hit is that, and this is what I've gained from the work of Corey Goode, I mentioned him before, and other whistleblowers that had been connected to the secret space programs is that the Nordic extraterrestrial races were connected to the Germans, and it wasn't this whole, he made a deal with the wrong guys. It was like there needed to be so much discernment and clarity about the larger picture that how can you possibly do that in those times? And this is what we're trying to sort out. And in these timelines and the deeper history connected to the secret societies in which we're talking about, these deeper extraterrestrial agendas that have been around for thousands of years. So when it presents itself to a world government or to these power structures, there's been pieces put into place specifically on purpose in order to create this outer facade, which we read in our history books that have nothing to do with the true history of what is actually going on. And so by the time the other meeting happened, they considered it more of a surrender, because they couldn't really do much in 1953, and when the UFOs were flown over the White House, that's when they made negotiations with the Nazis, because they didn't have a choice. So what she's saying here is that actually it was made to look like we won World War II. But in reality, she's saying, based on what she knows, is that we actually didn't win World War II, and that the Nazis and these aliens were showing a show of power by flying straight over the White House. Now, back in 2010, she had another interview, or actually she posted a document on the web describing her own contacts with beings of other worlds. And she says, it seemed clear to me that there were both false abductions, more holographic and communicated to the person through chips, and then there were real ones, the ones I believe my great-grandfather President Eisenhower confronted, which has been a well-known cover-up. Now, at this meeting, Eisenhower was forced into the agreement with one race of extraterrestrials, which involved the exchange of technology for the ability to take some of us like cattle, examine us, and return us safely with no recollection of these events. But that's what we're told. But there's a lot of missing people out there. So now where did these Eisenhower rumors stem from? So you have 12/11/84, television producer by the name of Jamie Shanderer received an envelope. It didn't have a return address on it, and she had two more envelopes inside with a 35mm roll of film. The first paper that was inside the envelope had a cover sheet labeled Top Secret / Magic Eyes Only, and it was also titled Briefing Document Operation MJ-12, prepared for President-elect Dwight D. Eisenhower. And it was dated on 11/18/1952. Admiral Roscoe, let me pronounce his last name, Hillenkotter, quoted earlier in the article talking about the UFOs. He was listed as a briefing officer for this event, along with Harry Truman, the president at the time, and he established the group under an executive order. There are other names on the document, General Nathan Twining, who stated in an intelligence document that phenomenon is something real and not visionary or fictitious. The reported operating characteristics such as extreme rates of climb, maneuverability, particularly in roll, motion, which must be considered evasive when sighted or contacted by friendly aircraft, and radar lend belief to the possibility that some of the objects are controlled either manually, automatically, or remotely, like a drone. The MJ-12 documents also state the known details of alien presence, though they cannot be confirmed as completely authentic. They still strike interest, and that's what I got on that.
Well, and for those that want to look for documents, go on go to www.blackvault.com.
State like Obama did that they can't say anything.
So if we go back to Harry Truman, President Truman was the first president to have to deal with the UFO phenomenon publicly.
What's that?
I said Harry Truman's the first president to have to deal with the UFO phenomena publicly. There may have been sightings and or UFO crashes before Truman,
Yes.
but nothing that had to be dealt with publicly. More importantly, Truman was the first president who had to deal with the public relations problems that go along with UFO phenomena. Truman was, in fact, the president who set up structure of the present intelligence systems and made it a tool for use by future presidents. In 1946, he set up the CIA, the Central Intelligence Group, which became the Central Intelligence Agency in 1947. He's also the first president in history to get a daily intelligence report, now known as the President Daily Briefing, to bring him up to date on the latest intelligence developments. Now, in 1951, Truman created the Office of Current Intelligence, and in 1952, the NSA. So once elected, Truman set out to reconstruct the intelligence system. He believed there had been a fragmented array of intelligence agencies run by each department. So, with that, each department walled itself off from other agencies to protect what it had. And that's where you have compartmentalization, which is part of the problem because now presidents can't find out what's going on because, well, the CIA's got their little wall up and it's classified. The NSA's got their little wall up and it's classified, and nobody knows what the other hand is doing. So Truman is the one who actually set up all that, and nobody can find out what's going on.
I don't know. I find it interesting. It seems like that they kind of do know what's going on, and somebody's telling them not to say anything. I mean, you can see that in the statements from Obama. You can see the statements from Clinton, and from the statements from Bush Sr.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm seeing here is, all of these guys are kind of making it sound like that, it's the aliens that don't want them to say anything. But that seems kind of off and weird because if that was the truth, I mean, these aliens obviously have a very high intellect to be able to build a craft to fly from wherever they're coming from to here through space. And then to have the technology to be able to shut down our fairly primitive weapons on our jets. But yet, at the same rate, you have all these UFO sightings. They don't really seem to hide themselves. If it's the aliens that are telling them not to say anything, you would think at that point then that they wouldn't be doing everything they could to make sure that nobody ever saw them. But that isn't the case. I mean, there's tons of sightings every year, thousands of them throughout the world, the United States and everywhere. Sometimes, especially in the United States, in more recent times. And it doesn't seem that, like some of them, even try to hide it. They just come in doing whatever they're going to do and then take off and go about their business. It seems like. Mm-hmm. So it makes me question, who is it exactly that is in the power position to say, you shut up, you don't say anything. Because to my way of thinking, it's obviously not the aliens, because if it was, they would be trying to hide themselves better so nobody saw them.
Well, that, and you gotta wonder too. Go ahead.
No, if you look at it from that perspective, look at it this way. If Eisenhower actually met with aliens, which we haven't found documentation on that's all conjecture. Do I think it happened? I do. That's my opinion. I think it happened. If you look at it from the perspective that they met with aliens and they made an agreement for some internet, for some weapons, whatnot, sure, you can abduct 200,000 people. Don't abduct one more, but you can abduct 200,000. They just sold the American people down the river. Do they really want to come out and say, yeah, we made an agreement with the aliens, and yeah, there's UFOs out there, and I'm sorry, but we just gave them permission to abduct you. Can you imagine what kind of an uproar that may or may not cause? And that might be one thing they're looking at. Not to mention some of the reaction that they might get with the fact that, well, yeah, they're here and there really ain't a whole lot of shit we can do about it because, well, we don't have the weaponry to take them out. So there you have a national security issue because our government can't control it. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's probably the government and their little secret, alphabet soup agencies that are keeping it quiet. What do you think, Seth?
You have to wonder. Though, if there's an invisible hand controlling all this, if there's someone who is pulling the strings to say, you can tell this, you can't tell that, how much of what we are seeing in the media with the goings-on politically is a facade. And I don't want to get all political on this program, but it raises the question is whether or not a party gets to be in office or in power, whether or not they're president or whether or not it is Senate control. I often wonder if these party alignments have some alien implications as a means where the party head is a figurehead as a human representative of whatever alien race that perhaps maybe that's where their agenda is actually coming from, is the alien race. And wouldn't it be some shit, you guys, if when we're casting our votes during these elections, if we're actually casting our vote, let's say, on a Nordic agenda or a reptilian agenda or a gray agenda, and they're all disguised, as Democrats and Republicans and independents, when in reality the things that we're voting for may have implications based on the aliens. If you'd ever seen the TV show called The Colony, in which aliens come down to Earth and they pick human representatives to deal with things politically, and they tell the humans to tell everybody else, hey, look, you're going to do this, or you're going to act like this, or the aliens are going to do this.
Very valid points.
Well, in that case, our current president must have the Mater agenda as far as I'm concerned.
The Mater and the V-Lash.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, though, love him or hate him, exactly how much they've let him know. Because he's come up, not with a political background.
No, he's a businessman. He's a businessman that's got no clue. And he's flip-flopped.
I mean, I'm surprised no one hasn't made a depiction now of a UFO just flying over the wall.
Yeah, he's building a wall for,
This guy here is just a businessman that found a way to make his other business buddies a little richer if he could, and he was pretty successful at convincing a lot of people on his docket that he would be doing something absolutely different. He has done exactly the opposite of what he said he was going to do when he got into office. So whether it has an alien agenda on this one or if he's just an idiot, well, somewhat of an idiot, I suppose. But I don't know. I mean, but you can, if you look at presidents in the past and the way some things went, yeah, you could see the possibility of some possible agenda extraterrestrial. With what they did with their policies and how they acted and how they spoke when in public. you know. But, currently, I think the only other president that I'd say is probably as big a buffoon as the one we got was Bush Jr.
Yeah, and look what happened with Bush Jr.
It makes you wonder how much they were let in on.
Look at the events that happened with Bush Jr. And it makes you wonder what's going to happen with Trump. The two biggest buffoons that this country's seen in history. And then you have to look at what are the theories. You look at 2017 to 2022, that window. That's coming from a lot of different sources. So it makes you wonder. And hold on a sec here. I'm scrolling through notes
now, this leads to the question. We need to piece these things together. And we need to think, if we can look back, or have the listeners even look back, and see what crucial bits of information we believe may have been released to each president, as far as, okay, I just saw what Corey said, okay, but as far as crucial information, which presidents were allowed what piece of the puzzle, because you guys have to think that maybe one president gets to know a certain aspect of it, whereas another one doesn't. It's kind of like telling your kids each other's Christmas presents. They don't get to know their own, but they get to know what everybody else is getting. And that's the best analogy I have for that one. And for whatever reason, such an very intricate web that is being woven in terms of all of this. And we know that there's something there. We all know it.
Yeah.
It's just a frustrating matter. I mean, the only people really who would panic, I guess, would be the skeptics.
Well, the skeptics and the...
I think there'd be more panic than that.
I would say it's the skeptics and the devout religious.
And the super religious.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I've had this discussion with other people too, that, full disclosure of an alien sitting down and going, "Hi, I'm here," I think would have a bit more of a frantic reaction than some of us think. And some of that is, as I've talked about before, it's just the human nature. When you see something that you have no comprehension of understanding, your brain kind of goes into a defense mechanism, and it either completely denies it or it freaks out about it. And in which case it's kind of hard to deny it when it's standing in front of you, but the freak out portion is there. I mean, even if you listen to Dave when you talk about his first experiences when he saw a UFO and an alien standing less than 100 yards from him, he said, he wasn't really thinking about anything except for the brick that he was about to crap into his pants. That's and as he explained it, as he says, here's something sitting in front of you that's not supposed to exist, that you've been taught all your life doesn't exist. It's not there. It's not real. but all of a sudden it's real and it's standing in front of you. Oh crap, what do I do? And that's the initial reaction that you get. Now, I think if Dave was to have that same experience now, it would be a completely different situation. When the alien said, hey, if you'd like to come over, I'm pretty sure that at that point he would probably walk over now, because his brain has gotten past that point of, wait, this is not supposed to exist. And I think that is part of the problem that we would have with the masses for the most part. Now, there has been a lot of speculation that a lot of the stuff that you see going on now, a lot of the leaked information, a lot of the awakening to things that are going on, the acceptance, some of these TV shows and all this different stuff that's going on about, aliens and everything else, is basically a planned, soft release of information, soft disclosure. And it's basically to slowly change the minds, to mold the minds, so that when this event at some point happens, that people don't, or a much more minority of people would freak out. And you got to think, there's a little validity there, when you think about it, because even currently at the point, even though the awareness is becoming more, there's more and more people becoming involved with paranormal and UFOs and aliens, there's still a large mass of people, especially, and I'll probably piss people off, I don't care if I do. I do that on a regular basis, I'm sure. Especially the religious right, there are, everything's a demon. And aliens are demons, and they don't exist. And when they decide to show themselves, right now, if they did it, those people especially, which would be, if I had to think about it, probably over a third, but not quite half, of the United States, for sure, would just lose their minds. They'd be crapping loads in their britches. You would have another percentage of people that would, freak out initially, but would eventually come around to it a little bit, probably something more along the lines of what happened with Dave. And then you would have, maybe the third of people that are more of the mindset that we are, which would look at that and go, well, it's about time somebody said something. Boy, I hope they're friendly.
No, well,
now, what?
It reminds me of Independence Day, the first one, where you've got the little group of people that are all standing on top of a skyscraper with their signs saying, welcome aliens. So I agree with your percentage with the ones that are going to freak out. Then you're going to have about a third of the knuckleheads on top of that, out in the middle of that field going, welcome, space brothers. And the rest of us are going, oh, hell, head for the hills until we find out what the agenda is. But completely agree. Go ahead, Seth.
I have a slightly different take on what I think might happen. If the religious unfolds one way or another, because you gotta think for a minute, one way or another, this could go so many different ways, though. Either one religion may be confirmed and the rest might be proven false, or maybe they all will be proven false, or in a way, maybe they all would be proven true. But here's my thing, and I've never heard this theory anymore. Yeah, we have people like all of us who would be accepting of it and be like, yeah, I told you so. But what about the people who are like, well, hey, we've been waiting for you guys to show up because we're really sick of the way people are running things. Council of Five, where you been? Gas prices suck. We need GMOs dealt with. We'll take up arms and side with you guys if you want to keep us safe, if you want to be our benefactors and ensure that you can take care of us, kind of as a intergalactic Stockholm Syndrome type deal. Where, yeah, we don't mind being enslaved as a human race as long as you make sure that we get 3 hots and a cot and we don't have to deal with the government bureaucracy anymore.
And let me play with that laser weapon you've got, because I don't like my shotgun
That's a
anymore.
possibility. You know, you look at the basic brainwashing that's happened already. It'd be a soft event for something like that. You never know. People just accept it, roll over.
Not the last third of us. Yeah, and if they're in Forest Moon Paranormal now, they ain't rolling over at all. And here's my other take on it. You again, looking at the word paranormal, you've got so many groups out there in the paranormal field that everything paranormal is haunting and ghosts and spirit, whereas you've got a very minority paranormal team that even looks at UFO and alien abduction. And to me, that's real sad, because Corey, we see just as many terrified clients that are abductees as we do. Oh my God, a ghost threw a toaster oven at my head. And the difference being, we can remove the spirit, we can pass over the ghost, we can remove the entity, but you can't stop aliens from abducting. So that's where the difference lies. We need more teams out there that are versed in abduction, that know how to deal with abductees, that know how to help them. And the only way you can really help them is find them a peer support group run by a psychiatrist to help. The downfall with that is, as has happened with some peer support groups, is you have government sources that go infiltrate them. Now, I'm curious to see where Forest Moon is in 2 or 3 months, now that we have a psychiatric clinic that is going to be sending us clients. Yeah, folks, we're having I know you can hear me just fine, but we're having Skype issues with our co-host. So just bear with us. Skype's giving us problems. So, like you said, Seth, I agree. If you look at the pieces to the puzzle with all the different, every president had a piece.
What's up, boss? I can't hear you.
Yeah, well, every president had a piece to what we see going on today. Truman, like I said, for example, started the CIA and started the intelligence agencies with a compartmentalization. They all saw UFOs. And if you go by the other theories, Eisenhower made the contract with the aliens. So if you look at the histories of all of them, and you see where each one did his piece, you may get a better picture. Now, where Trump fits in, I have no freaking clue.
He may already have, and everything that's going on is a big facade to hide something. I've often wondered where maybe one day we wake up and there's a more serious tone about this whole horse and pony show that's going on. Perhaps some of this stuff that's going on in the world has intergalactic implications. But the whole thing here, and coming to a head with this, guys, is that if these things come to fruition and these guys land and things happen, what the hell are we going to be talking about every Sunday?
Oh, there'll be
What
plenty
the alien policies are?
The alien policies.
The alien agenda and why Trump's alien wall's
What
not
if we
working
found
anymore.
out that we were the alien?
So
Try to
Trump's,
get an interview with a high-ranking alien official. Get our first gray on the program.
There you go. I'd still like to find Valiant Thor. Valiant Thor would be a cool one to interview.
Well, if we're gonna,
That's a whole nother show in itself.
It is, and supposedly he's still here. And it's really interesting because we went to Nevada last year.
if we were gonna get an alien on the program, we'd have to make sure it had one that had vocal cords, because it does appear that a lot of them talk
We'll have to
telepathically. So
we'll have to
make sure one can
translate
talk.
telepathy. So according to some theories, Valiant Thor is still in Nevada, and I guess invisible or
Well, this has been pretty
base or
fun,
whatever.
guys. I myself am gonna I'm gonna have to jump though because my son's awake right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and peter off right here, but you guys can go ahead and finish up. Thank you guys for all listening on my behalf, and I look forward to being here next week.
Appreciate it, Seth. You have a good night, my friend.
Indeed, and next week we're talking UFOs in general and the patterns, the patterns that we're going to see that we've seen over this last year, and what's coming up as far as the patterns we have seen. You still with me, Corey? All right. I'm going to go ahead and click out Skype, and we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show tonight. Sorry about that, folks. I'm getting tired of technical difficulties. But there are better days ahead, and thank you, Bloviator. We got a lot of new folks in here tonight, and it's encouraging to see. Next week, I had on the schedule for Native American lore. That's going to be a lot of research in getting a Native American on here to actually go into the lore, going into the lore of Bigfoot, and going into the lore of, or actually what they call Hairy Man, and going into the lore of UFOs and the star people they've actually. We actually were on every night, Sunday at midnight, Pacific Standard Time after the Spaced Out weekend. So you'll find us here. And ideally, we can get internet running a lot better, because I'm actually on satellite internet, which sucks when it comes to running a show. So let me wrap up my co-host here real quick. But yeah, we're on every, you can listen to all the archives. All of our archives are still on Spreaker based on the program I've got. We've covered alien races. We've covered Illuminati. And like I said earlier, Illuminati, it's hard to find valid sources as far as there's a lot of theories out there with the Illuminati. The Illuminati being tied to the reptilians. Firmly, I believe the reptilians started the Illuminati, and I've actually found Dante Santori in his videos actually goes into it. Now, if you're familiar with the Alien Races book that Dante Santori translated, that's where we get a lot of our information from. I've been in the UFO abduction field for over 20 years, and so a lot of his information I've validated actually, and verified. And very intense, very good book. So with that, folks, we'll see you next week. If you're local here in Washington State, hope to see you at some of our events. We got Paracon coming in September 23rd up here in Concrete, Washington. Hope to see some of you show up. And we have 4 excellent speakers. We're keeping it small this year. It is a free event. I don't believe in charging for a Paracon. Everyone charges $200-300 for tickets and all that, and most people can't afford that. And when it comes to a Paracon, we cover every aspect of the paranormal, which to me, the paranormal is an umbrella that covers your hauntings, your ghosts, aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot, and cryptids. So there you go. Paranormal is not just ghosts. It's the whole 9 yards. So y'all have a good night, have a good week, and take care.